"We've decided to give your room away," Mom said like it meant nothing. But to me, it meant everything. I smiled. And for the first time in my life, I said what she never expected to hear. It all started over toast and eggs. You know those moments in life when everything shifts, not with a scream or a bang, but with a single sentence? Mine came on a Tuesday morning, right before school, while I was still half asleep and trying to decide if my coffee tasted burnt or just bitter. That's when Mom, without even looking up from her phone, said it. "Oh, by the way, we're giving your room to Uncle Ron and Aunt Janet." Just like that, as if she'd said, "Pass the salt." I blinked. "What?" Before we go further, don't forget to like this story, hit subscribe, and tap the bell, so you don't miss what happens next. She finally looked up. "Your room. You'll bunk with your sister for a while. They're moving in next week." She said it so casually, like I wasn't living in that room, like it was just a space, just some square footage that didn't mean anything. I didn't say much. I didn't throw a tantrum or demand answers. I just smiled and said, "Cool. I'll start packing." Now, you need to understand, this wasn't just about the room. It was everything. That room was the only place in the house that actually felt like mine. My escape. My boundary. My one safe spot in a house that always felt like I had to apologize for taking up space. I decorated it myself when I turned 16. Saved up to buy string lights. Picked out every poster, every little plant, every book stacked on the shelf. And now they were just handing it off? To relatives who barely visited, who treated me like I was still 5 and couldn't speak without permission. I told them I'd start packing. And I did. But not into boxes. I started packing plans. Quiet ones. The kind of plans you don't even tell your friends because they'll try to talk you out of it. I was 18. Legally an adult. I had a part-time job, a small emergency fund I'd been slowly building, and college coming up in a few months. I started checking listings. Studio apartments. Room shares. Even sublets near campus. Every night, I'd scroll quietly, like a secret rebellion. Meanwhile, my parents acted like everything was normal, like I hadn't just been evicted from my life. The week before Uncle Ron and Aunt Janet were set to arrive, Mom handed me a shopping list. "Pick up some air fresheners and a new shower curtain, would you? I want the place to look nice when they get here." I took the list, smiled, and added it to the collection of emotional IOUs I'd been carrying for years. And that's when it really hit me. It wasn't about the room. It was the message. You are temporary. They are permanent. Your comfort is negotiable. Theirs is not. I started sleeping on the couch before they even asked me to move out of the room. I told them it was because I was getting used to the change. In reality, I was making it easier for myself to leave. I didn't want them to think I was being dramatic. That's always how they dismiss me. "Claire's so sensitive. She makes everything a big deal. She needs to learn to adapt." So I adapted. I played it cool. I showed up to family dinner. I helped clean. I smiled through small talk about my cousins and their real problems. But deep down, I was already gone. The final straw? It wasn't even something huge. It was the night I overheard Dad on the phone, telling someone, "It's just Claire. She'll figure it out. She always does. Just Claire." As if I was some inconvenience that could be shuffled around, repurposed, handed off like an old piece of furniture. That night, I booked a one-way train ticket. I moved out on a Sunday. I told them I was going for a walk. Instead, I left a note on the fridge. "Thanks for the memories. I'll be staying elsewhere from now on. Love you, Claire." No drama. No big speech. Just the kind of goodbye that says everything without raising your voice. I took my backpack, my savings, and every ounce of self-respect I could carry. And I left. They didn't call at first. I think they expected me to come back, to realize I'd made a mistake, to apologize. But I didn't. I got a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers and a cat named Waffles. I started working extra shifts, saved more, slept better, breathed deeper. For the first time, I felt still. Looking back, I know what people might say. It was just a room. You overreacted. They're your parents. But let me tell you something. It's never just about the room. It's about the message that comes with it. The message that says you don't matter as much as someone else's comfort. That your roots can be dug up at any time. And the second you start believing that, you forget you ever deserved more. But I remembered. And that's when everything changed. You know, when people talk about leaving home, they usually mean moving on to something bigger: college, career, love, freedom. But when I left home, it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a silent goodbye to something I never fully had to begin with. That room, the one they gave away so casually, it wasn't just four walls and a bed. It was the first space in my life where I didn't feel like I was always apologizing for existing, where I could close the door and exhale, where I could peel off the armor I wore around my family. And losing it? It cracked something in me, not because I was being forced to sleep somewhere else, but because it confirmed what I'd spent years trying not to believe, that in their eyes, I was never permanent. Growing up, I always knew I wasn't the favorite, not in a dramatic, Cinderella way, more like quiet neglect, the kind you can't point to easily. My sister, Kayla, the golden girl, straight-A student, dance recitals, homecoming court, the kind of kid that made photo albums fill themselves. And me? I was support staff. Not a problem, but not the pride either. Claire's so independent. Claire doesn't need much. She's our easy one. At first, I wore those words like a badge. I thought being easy meant I was strong, low maintenance, the mature one. But as I got older, I realized what it really meant. It meant I was invisible. When Kayla got sick in high school, nothing major, just mono, the world stopped. Homemade soup, canceled plans, mom crying in the laundry room because she was so stressed. When I broke my wrist falling off the bus, they asked if I could walk home from the ER so they wouldn't miss a dinner reservation. I still remember sitting on the curb, cast freshly set, wondering if that was normal. If other kids had to Google how to fill out their own insurance forms at 16. It's funny how you convince yourself it's fine. You tell yourself it's love, just a different kind. That they're busy. That they're tired. That maybe you are too sensitive. You shrink a little, hoping that if you take up less space, they'll finally see you. But it doesn't work. They just fill the space you gave up with someone else. Like Uncle Ron and Aunt Janet. Let me tell you about them. They're not bad people. They're not cruel. But they're the kind of family that only calls when they need something: a place to crash, a loan, someone to dog sit when they're in Spain for the 5th time this year. And my parents? They bend over backwards for them. They've had such a hard time. They're family. We owe them. But I couldn't help but wonder, what did I owe to deserve being displaced? Had I not earned my spot in this house? Did growing up under this roof mean nothing if someone else could just walk in and replace me? That first week in the new apartment, I couldn't sleep. Not because it was loud or unfamiliar. Actually, it was cozy in a chaotic, mismatched furniture kind of way. But because I was grieving something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. I was grieving the idea of parents who saw me, of a childhood that made space for me, not just around me. I missed my room, yes. But more than that, I missed the illusion that I mattered to them in the way that I always hoped I did. And that illusion had shattered the moment they slid the breakfast plate in front of me and said, "We're giving them your room." I started writing again that week. Journaling, something I hadn't done in years. It started as scribbles, angry thoughts, but slowly, the entries became letters. Letters I never sent. To my mom, to my dad, even one to Kayla. I told them all the things I never said out loud. How I hated that they called me the easy one, when what they meant was the one we don't have to try for. How it felt to be 18 and already planning an exit strategy from people who claimed to love me. How much it hurt to realize I wasn't even worth a conversation before losing the one space that felt like mine. One night, I wrote a letter to myself. It sounds corny, I know, but it helped. I wrote, "Dear Claire, you did nothing wrong. You didn't ask for too much. You didn't imagine it. You are not hard to love. They were just too busy loving their idea of a perfect family to see the real one they had. You're not disposable. You're free. Keep going." I pinned that page on my closet door. Every time I felt the pull of guilt or that ache to call home just to hear a familiar voice, I read it again. And I stayed gone. People ask why I didn't just talk to them, why I didn't sit down and have a heart-to-heart. But when the people you're supposed to trust consistently show you who they are, and you keep hoping they'll prove you wrong, eventually, the conversation you need to have is with yourself, not with them. And the hardest part? Accepting that sometimes walking away from the table isn't a tantrum. It's the only way to stop starving. It had been 2 months since I left. 2 months of sharing a bathroom with 3 roommates, learning how to cook something other than microwave noodles, and reminding myself every morning that I made the right decision, even on the days it didn't feel like it. Then I got the text. "Hey, Claire. Some of your stuff is still in the closet. Can you come grab it? Ron and Janet need the space. No, hope you're well. No, we miss you." Just a nudge to clear out the last pieces of myself from the home I grew up in. I almost ignored it. But there was a box of journals I hadn't taken, a couple childhood keepsakes, and my old guitar, the one thing I actually cared about. So I texted back. "Sure. I'll swing by Saturday." I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Didn't want to give them time to turn it into a moment. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth for hugs and fake smiles and Mom's overly sweet voice asking, "How's life on your own?" I arrived mid-afternoon, pulled up to the house, and sat in the driveway for a full minute before getting out. It looked the same. White shutters. That one chipped stare that no one ever fixed. The flower pots Mom always let die by midsummer. But something about it felt smaller. Like the house had shrunk in my absence. Or maybe I'd just grown. The front door was unlocked. Typical. I stepped in and was immediately hit with the smell of vanilla air freshener and something overly floral, probably to impress Ron and Janet. Voices floated in from the kitchen. Laughter. Glasses clinking. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be pulled into a fake conversation or asked how I liked adulting. So I slipped down the hallway, as quiet as I could, heading straight to my old room. Or what used to be my room. The door had been repainted. A soft gray. Classy. Forgettable. When I opened it, I was hit with a wave of disorientation. Gone were the fairy lights. The posters. The shelves lined with worn-out books. My little corkboard with postcards and concert tickets. My quilt. My scent. Instead, beige bedding. A framed photo of a vineyard. Suitcases in the corner. It looked like a mid-tier Airbnb. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought I'd walked into a guest room in someone else's house. And maybe I had. Because this wasn't mine anymore. It never really had been. My old closet door was ajar. Inside was one box. Just one. Labeled Claire's Things in black Sharpie. As if that one box was all I'd ever been. I opened it. Inside were a few old yearbooks, a sweater I thought I'd lost, my high school diploma, and a Ziploc bag of childhood photos. Most of them with me cropped on the edge of the frame. And my guitar, leaning awkwardly in the corner, strings loose, a little dusty. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the fretboard. It still felt like home in a way the rest of this place never did. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out all the warmth from the walls and replaced it with polite neutrality. Then I heard footsteps. Mom's voice outside the room. She hadn't seen me yet. "Claire's here," she said to someone. "Try to be nice. You know how she gets." How I get. That was all she had to say about me. I waited a few seconds, then opened the door. She was standing in the hallway, wine glass in hand, surprised but not enough to cover it with anything convincing. "Claire. Oh, I didn't know you were just grabbing my things," I said. "I'll be out in a minute." She nodded, trying to recover. Ron and Janet have been loving this room. It's just perfect for them. That did it. "Glad to know my life fit their needs," I said, not even looking at her. She blinked. "Don't be like that." "Like what?" "So cold." I nearly laughed. Cold? I had been quiet, patient, polite, for years. If this was me being cold, maybe that's what they needed to finally feel something. I didn't stay long, just long enough to fit the box and my guitar into the back seat. As I turned to leave, I glanced into the living room. Kayla was there, curled up on the couch, chatting with Aunt Janet, who was sipping tea from my mug. Dad was asleep in his chair, snoring softly. And nobody looked up. Nobody stopped to say goodbye. Nobody acted like I had ever lived there. As I drove away, the tears finally came. But they weren't from sadness. They were from clarity. Because I finally understood that leaving wasn't the tragedy. Staying would have been. It's funny how, after everything, I still waited for an apology. I told myself I didn't need it. That I was past it. That moving out was enough. But deep down, some tiny, hopeful part of me still thought one day I'd get a message. Maybe not a full speech. Maybe just 2 words. "I'm sorry." But days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And nothing came. In that time, I built a life that felt like mine. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop, got promoted to assistant manager. My roommates and I started a Sunday night tradition. Cheap pasta, movie marathons, and no talking about work or families unless we wanted to. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I started writing again, too. Not just journaling this time. Essays, personal reflections. I even submitted a few to online magazines, and to my surprise, one got published. The essay was titled, "Rooms Are Not Just Rooms." It was about how easily families can minimize the spaces we hold, both physically and emotionally. It went viral. Not TikTok viral, but big enough that strangers began emailing me their own stories. Stories of being replaced, overlooked, silenced. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone. Then one day, I got a letter. Not from my parents, not from Kayla, but from Aunt Janet. I hesitated to open it, almost tossed it in the trash. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "Claire, I just wanted you to know that Ron and I had no idea the room we're staying in used to be yours. Your mother made it sound like you'd already moved out months ago and that it was just storage. I'm sorry we played any part in hurting you. If I'd known, I'd have said something. Wishing you peace and success. Janet." I sat on my bed, holding that letter, stunned. Not because it was particularly heartfelt, but because it was more than I'd ever gotten from my actual family. I started asking myself a question I'd avoided for a long time. Why did I keep waiting for them to make it right? Why did I think they'd wake up one day and suddenly see me for who I was? The truth? Because I still wanted to believe they could. That somewhere, buried deep beneath the guilt and the denial and the passive-aggressive remarks, there was a version of my parents that wanted to know me, wanted to grow, wanted to make things better. But you can't force someone to see what they've never tried to look at. A few weeks later, I ran into my mom at the grocery store. Total accident. We reached for the same loaf of sourdough. She looked startled. I looked fine. "Claire," she said, blinking. "You look different." "I am," I said simply. There was an awkward pause. "Are you doing okay?" "I'm good." Another pause. She adjusted her purse strap, fidgeted with the bread. "Kayla's graduating next month. We're throwing a party." I nodded. "That's nice. You're welcome to come." "Thanks, but I'm busy." Her smile faltered. She didn't press. And for the first time, I realized something. She wasn't going to apologize. Not now. Maybe not ever. Because to do that, she'd have to admit something real. She'd have to say, "We chose convenience over you. We let you fade out of the frame. We failed you." And that kind of honesty? It wasn't in their toolbox. But mine was getting stronger. And maybe that's the point. Maybe closure isn't something they give you. Maybe it's something you create, one boundary at a time. That night, I wrote one final entry in my journal. Today I saw her. And I didn't feel small. I didn't need her to fix it. I didn't ache for a do-over. I just saw her as she was. And saw myself, finally, as someone whole. It took me a while to realize I didn't want to go back. Not just physically, I mean emotionally. I didn't want to keep hoping that one day my parents would say the right words, throw open their arms, and become the version of mom and dad I used to dream about. The kind you put your drawing on the fridge and actually meant it when they said, "We're proud of you." It wasn't bitterness. It was peace. You can't build your house on a foundation that keeps shifting beneath you. I needed solid ground. And oddly enough, I started finding it in the most unexpected places. There was this night, late April, just after a spring thunderstorm. I was sitting on our apartment's fire escape with my laptop and a mug of cheap wine, listening to my roommates argue over whether to order Thai or pizza, and I just exhaled. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Rent was late. My job was exhausting. I had no clue what came next after graduation. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting on someone to give me permission to belong somewhere. I was building it for myself. I started writing more. The kind of writing that came from my voice, not the one I used to make myself smaller. I submitted pieces to online zines, local blogs, anywhere that would take me. One essay landed on a platform with a real following, and suddenly, I was getting messages from people saying things like, "I thought I was the only one. Your words put something into place for me. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." That's when I realized maybe I wasn't just healing for me. Maybe I was saying the things we've all needed to hear. That your pain is valid even if it's quiet. That being the easy one doesn't mean you don't bleed. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Around that same time, I got a letter in the mail. From my dad. My actual dad. Not Aunt Janet pretending to speak for both of them. It was 2 pages long, written in neat, formal cursive. The kind of handwriting that looked like it was used for birthday cards and thank you notes. It was awkward. Careful. He said he missed me. Said he hadn't handled the room situation well. Said that maybe he and Mom had assumed I'd be fine because I always seemed fine, and they didn't realize they'd made me feel disposable. It wasn't a full apology, but it was something. I didn't write back right away. I wanted to feel everything first. The shock. The skepticism. The part of me that still wanted to protect my peace. But after a week, I wrote a response. Thanks for your letter. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm still figuring things out. I hope you're too. Short. Honest. Boundaried. Because closure isn't about grand reunions or dramatic hugs on porches. Sometimes it's just about choosing not to carry the weight of someone else's silence anymore. Later that month, I made a choice that surprised even me. I applied for a small writing fellowship abroad in Edinburgh. It was a long shot. Hundreds of applicants. Only a handful of spots. But I hit submit anyway. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like someone pretending to be a writer. I felt like someone becoming one. A few weeks later, I got the email. I got in. 3 months. Paid housing. Mentorship with a published author. A new country. A fresh start. I called Jenna, one of my roommates, and screamed so loud she dropped her iced coffee. I didn't tell my parents right away. Not out of spite. But because this moment? It was mine. All mine. I sat down that night and pulled out the letter from my dad. Reread it. Folded it. Tucked it into my journal. Then I grabbed a blank page and wrote, Dear Claire, you made it. Not because they apologized. Not because they changed. But because you did. You learned to stop waiting at doors that never open. You built your own. And now, you're walking through it. Love, me. 2 weeks before I left for Scotland, I got another text from my mom. Would you consider coming to dinner? Everyone will be there. Just a family thing before Kayla leaves for her internship. I stared at it for a long time. No guilt trip. No passive-aggressive jab. Just a quiet olive branch. It felt weird. Like a test I hadn't studied for but still kind of knew the answers to. After a lot of pacing and a little wine, I replied, Sure. One dinner. I arrived with exactly 0 expectations. I wore something neutral. Not 2. I'm doing great without you. But also not, I'm here to be forgiven. Just me. The version of me that took time to build. The dinner table looked familiar, but it felt different. And Janet gave me a soft smile. Kayla chirped a hey stranger, like nothing had happened. Uncle Ron complimented my haircut. And my parents? They watched me like they didn't know which version of me was going to show up. The quiet girl who used to take emotional scraps and call them love, or the woman who packed her life in a backpack and left without looking back. They got the latter. We made small talk. Work, weather, Kayla's new boyfriend. All the safe topics. But I could feel the tension building, like a storm cloud waiting to break. Finally, during dessert, Dad cleared his throat. Claire, we're glad you came tonight. I nodded. Thanks. He glanced at Mom, who gave him the tiniest of nudges. Then he looked back at me. I guess we've been wondering. Why? He said. Why did you leave like that? No warning. No real conversation. Just gone. And there it was. The question they finally asked. Not out of anger, but genuine confusion. They didn't understand. Because they never really saw it. I took a breath. Looked at both of them. Calm. Clear. Measured. Because for a long time, I didn't think I mattered here. Mom's eyes widened, but she didn't interrupt. Every decision was made without me. Every time I asked for space, I was told to stop being dramatic. Every time I needed something, it was too much. But when Ron and Janet needed something, the whole house shifted. You didn't ask. You didn't check. You just handed over the only space I had and acted like I should be grateful. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. But the words cut deeper that way. Clean. Surgical. And even after I left, no one came after me. You let me go like I was never really here. Silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then Mom spoke. We didn't realize. You always seemed so strong. I said. But strength doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. The rest of the dinner was quieter, more thoughtful. When I left, Mom walked me to the door. She didn't say much, just looked at me, like she was seeing something new. Or maybe something that had been there the whole time, and she just hadn't bothered to look close enough. You're really leaving the country? Yeah. When? Next week. She nodded slowly. I hope you find what you're looking for. I already did, I said. I found myself. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rehash the conversation in my head 100 times. I didn't ask myself whether I should have said more or said less. Because for once, I knew. I said exactly what I needed to say. No guilt. No regret. Just truth. A few days later, I boarded a plane with one suitcase, my laptop, my favorite hoodie, and a copy of that letter I wrote myself. Somewhere high above the clouds, I opened my journal and wrote one last entry for the chapter one was leaving behind. They finally asked. And I told them. Not for them to understand, but for me to finally let go. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not broken. I'm free. And I know now, home isn't where they let you stay. It's where you choose to grow. If this story touched you, share it with someone who remembers those days too.